All right, what's up, everyone? Welcome to another edition of the Penta Podcast. I'm Kiran Shaitley Nujibel, and joining me is pro player, analyst, caster, master of all trades, my dear friend Ranjit MambaSR Patel. Mamba, what's up, man? How are you?
I'm doing great, man. Clearly, you see it around me. It's all good, all wonderful. Everything's good. But no, in all honesty, I'm doing very well. It's obviously been a very interesting year, 2023. The entirety of it, I think there was a lot of uncertainty on what's happening around. But everything's falling in place and can't be doing better.
Man, good times to be in, and you figuratively and literally are in the hot seat by the looks of things for today. You've got your cup of coffee right next to you as well.
Yeah.
And hopefully that background is a sign of how this conversation is going to progress today. Fingers crossed.
Yeah, no, I would not like to burn all the bridges, but we'll figure it out. We'll see where this goes.
We'll see. All right. Let's begin first with the obvious question, right? MambaSR. What's the story behind that name, man?
Yeah, so it's a funny story. So when I started playing, obviously I didn't know there was a thing called alias, right? So I just started with my name. So it just used to be Ranjit. And then I discovered Hannah Montana, and I used to have the biggest crush on Miley Cyrus, right? So I used to play 1.6 with this name, Ranjit. I love Miley Cyrus. And that was a thing for like a couple of years. And then my first ever gaming mouse, which was a bet with my dad's friend. And it was a very expensive mouse back in 2012, right? I couldn't get it because I was a kid, right? So my dad's friend offered to buy it to me if I won that match I was playing. And they were in my room watching the match unfold. So it turns out the mouse that I got was a Razer Mamba, right? Oh. So the mouse is where the name comes from. So it became Mamba. And what I did not realize was that Mamba was a very common name. So there was this guy in CSGO whose name was also Mamba. And turns out that a lot of people, when I started casting, messages meant for me were ending up in his inbox. And he made a post on CSGO India that, hey, I'm not the guy you're looking for. And people started tagging me. And so, you know how back in the day when a lot of people would stream, they would have this name on their Steam account, right? When they're playing CS, twitch.tv/whatever name. So I realized for me to fit that entire name in the game, I only had space for 2 more alphabets. So how do I distinguish myself? And I was like, cool, let me see. And I went with SR because the R is supposed to be small technically if I was writing senior, but I didn't like it because all the old players, right, Spawn, Heaton, they would have the first alphabet and the last alphabet capital.
Yeah.
So I made it MambaSR, just sort of portraying that, hey, I'm the senior most Mamba out here. I'm the one you're looking for.
That's a reference I've not heard in a very long time. First and last letters caps. That's exactly how I write mine as well. You have all the small letters and capital letters coming in, but the S and the R have to be in caps. That goes without saying. I think that's like
that's how you know you're
gamer.
Old now. Yeah, we're both old. It's funny because before we went live, we were talking about single player games now, and I have never been a person who plays single player games. I've always been attack FPS Andy, and a lot of times I even question myself if I'm really a gamer, right? Because my idea of gaming was always competing.
Right.
It was never really exploring different games and whatnot. So at the end of the day, there's no authority who can define you as a gamer. But it really did make me question because to me, all that mattered was you compete and you try to win. You compete and win.
Yeah, you're more of an athlete than a casual gamer, so to speak.
Probably,
I think.
yeah.
With me, life's come like a full circle already. It started with single player games, did competitive across multiple titles, and back to single player games as well. I've gone. But that being said, of course, you've done multiple titles, multiple roles. However, the one I think me and everybody else knows you for is your casting, right? And this is something you've actually done for a while. How did the journey begin, Mamba?
By sheer accident. So this one day I decided to bunk. Before I tell you that story, right? It's funny because now most of the Valorant players that have seen me in the last 2 years, they don't know me as a caster. They know me as a host.
Correct.
Because they've never seen me cast. I've cast very few matches of Valorant. So they think of, at least for the last 2 years, right? Before that, obviously, I started casting in 2016 and whatnot. So it started by sheer accident. I used to make YouTube videos back. I started on YouTube in 2009, right? But those were videos just for fun. Then I made my second channel, the one that I use right now, in 2014. So I was okay. I was not very good. I was okay with the camera or just being comfortable enough to put my voice out there and talk about the game, one-way smokes and whatnot with CSGO. And one day I decided to bunk my college early, right? And I went back home and I got on this TeamSpeak. So I used to, back in 2014, I used to play for this Indonesian team called Bindy Geeks, BDGS.
Right.
And we used to compete in Battlefield 4. So I met a common bunch of friends, somebody from Revival Esports also. So there was this girl who was the brand ambassador for Revival Esports, and we were just chilling on Discord with a group of friends. And she needed some help with her PC. And then there's this guy called 8Ken. He's also a commentator who's still around. I haven't spoken to him in a very long time. So he walks in, and he used to also compete back in the day in BF3. So he saw my name, he recognized me, like, dude, are you the same guy who used to play for this team? I was like, I am. And then we started talking, and he was supposed to be casting the qualifiers for IEM Taipei in 2016. So he said, tomorrow there's an Indian team playing. I think it was either Brutality or Scorchers. I don't remember.
Right.
Back in the day. So he's like, look, it's an Indian team. Why don't you come and cast with me? I've always been a very shy kid. I've always been an introvert of sorts.
Oh, really?
I think that goes hand. Trust me, it's very different from what people perceive me. So I the way I explain it to them, right? I feel like Ranjit and Mamba are two different people. When I'm in Surat, I am Ranjit. When I'm outside Surat, I'm Mamba. That's the way I segregate it. So I am actually, I used to be a massive introvert. I've learned to, pick other things up. So he said there's an Indian team playing, and around the same time, so I was 18, right? I was going through this evolution, learning things about life, getting into college. And my elder brother had told me this one thing, where we were talking about something. He said, try and fail, but don't fail to try, right? And I used to be very reluctant in terms of trying new things. So even if I go to a restaurant and I like a dish, I'll keep ordering the same dish. I don't care about trying new things. So, dude, it got to a point where there was this restaurant in this old place I used to live at, right? I would walk in and I wouldn't even have to order. The waiter would just know, like, the same thing, cool, it's coming.
Oh, so
even
the
now,
usual?
the usual. So even now, if I go there, right? I think there's 1 or 2 staff members from that time on, and I probably go once every 2 years or once a year, and they still recognize me, like the usual. And it was that obvious, right? So he said, try and fail, but don't fail to try. And when he offered me the gig, he was like, just come in and hop on with me, commentate. Like, I have no clue how to commentate, right? And I'll be honest, when I look back on the words, I was terrible. I was dog shit. If I started off that way right now, I would not have the opportunity. I had the early moves advantage, and that's how it worked out. So I got on. We did a match, I think. But then this was 13th of January. I think 14th of January in 2016. Was it 14th? Either 13th or the 14th of January in Jakarta, there was an explosion or some sort of an attack. So the entire city was on a lockdown. And I'm sure there are still articles around, you can look it up. But bottom line was the city was on a lockdown and 8Ken couldn't travel to the studio. And there were supposed to be 7 maps that day. And I was filling in for him. And I am somebody with zero experience in casting, right? So I don't know how to pace myself. I don't know how to commentate, when to modulate my voice, when to conserve my energy. And turns out 3 more matches got preponed. So I have 10 maps of Counter-Strike. Literally the first time I'm doing it alone. And I'm just there sitting and talking about the game, right? I have no clue what I'm doing. And there's roughly 10 people watching. One of which was Blair as well. Blair was at Toxie, who was here in India for an event. He was there watching it. Still have old screenshots, I think on my phone or somewhere in the gallery. So I think by map 5, I could barely speak, right? I lost my voice by map 5 because I didn't know how to pace myself. After the 7th map, I got some 10-15 minute dinner break. And I go out, try and have my dinner. I can't talk. My mom looks at my face and she knows I'm exhausted, right? And she tells me, if you're doing this for money, don't do it. I'm like, I'm not getting paid for this. I'm just doing it because I like it. So I wasn't getting paid. I was burning myself to the ground trying to commentate. And it got so bad that even the viewers were like, just, okay, conserve your energy and talk about, try and commentate when the Indian team comes on because you're Indian, obviously, right? So I did 10 maps, which was roughly 12 hours of broadcast that day. And I got noticed by Siddharth Nair, who was at EFK. And then I think within a couple of weeks, there was supposed to be the India hub for IEM Taipei.
Right.
So that was my first paid gig after that. The first 12 maps were obviously not paid. 10 maps, sorry. And then Sid offered me a gig where I quoted so low, he felt bad and he gave me 100 rupees more than I asked for. So I think I might have quoted some 300 rupees if I remember it correctly. And he was like, 400 le yaar tu. because
Itna
I didn't
to
know what to
banta
quote,
hai.
right? Itna to banta hai. And he gave me my first gig, and I think from the entire gig, I must have earned some 5,600 rupees or something like that. So that's how I got into commentating. It was just a sheer accident getting noticed, and then things started rolling. And it's funny because January 2016, I started commentating, and I picked up on it very quickly. Obviously, I was trying to hone my skill as well. And from January 2016, starting off, having no clue about commentating, December 2016, I'm in China doing the World Cyber Arena. Within 12 months, I landed my first international gig. So that happened. Then obviously television happened in 2017 with Dew Arena being live on television.
Right.
Which I think that was the first time where esports was actually live on television. I think a lot of people have this misconception that it was BGMS, but which is not the case.
Yeah.
BGMS was not the first one.
Was this the event that was played on D-Sport?
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember. I watched a lot of those games as well. Yeah.
Yeah, so that happened live on television. Then obviously we had offline, so not offline, but on like scheduled broadcasts that would happen. And that was great exposure, right? When I look back, I'm very grateful for the opportunities I had because it taught me things, not just with the work, but I think the experiences I've had over there, it shaped my life now. Like the sort of confidence it gives you, the sort of exposure it gives you is unmatched.
That's a very interesting start, Mamba. And I know for a fact a lot of the casters, the OG ones at least, had similar beginnings where you would go through a period of time where you're trying to hone your skills, you're gonna try and improve, and you're not really too worried about how much you're getting paid, right? And I think that is a contrast to some of the casters I've seen recently, at least aspiring ones who've
Actually, I have an
messaged
opinion on
me,
it.
right? And they're like, hey, kitna milega? And you're like, hey, you're gonna have to get to a point where then you can start commanding, right? There is a point of time where you have to put your foot down and say, okay, I have experience now, I am good, and this is, but there is a stage you go through till you get there, right? Where you're constantly looking to put yourself out there, get opportunities, and just get good. So I think that's something that
I actually want to
a lot
add to
of
it, right?
aspiring people.
So I understand. Look, see, when we started, there was no concept of commentating. I still
Correct.
remember watching Anders on Go TV, right? Who was commentating on just Go TV, and then suddenly he's at a major whatever, right? So we were doing it purely out of passion and rebelliousness. And it's not that now people, when they know they can make money off of it, they shouldn't make money off of it because everybody wants to make money, and making money is very difficult, right? So anybody who wants to do it for the money, it's understandable. We came from a place where there was passion involved, there was rebelliousness involved, and then obviously we ended up making a career out of it. But the one critical opinion I have of it, right, is a lot of people. So there's two schools of thought. There are people who severely undercut you, and the organizers will get them because it does not affect the viewership. And that's a business decision I'm willing to respect, because at the end of the day, look, if there's somebody investing money in your company and you can't get the ROI, then what's the point, right? And you can't pay the talent if they're asking for X amount of money.
Yeah.
But then there's this second school of thought where they want the sun and the moon and the stars and everything, but they have nothing to offer.
Yeah.
And I feel like it's not just when the match goes live. You're actually putting the most amount of work when you're offline. Yeah. So this is something you and I, we spoke about this off camera, where we were talking about our tech checks, and you mentioned there was some event where you had to get me on for a tech check and you were not worried about it. Yeah. So when I walk into an event, I take pride in the fact that my reputation precedes me to the point where I don't have to worry about my gear, my internet, or me showing up on time, or making sure that I fulfill my deliverables, right? Because we've worked together and you know this. Yeah, so the fact that I got a lease line, right? And I told you this, that I don't think there's any freelance caster in the country who has a lease line at his home. So I'm willing to go through that effort to make sure that I am dependable. So when you're asking for a certain amount of money, it's not because you have a pretty face or a pretty voice and you can talk about the game. It's the dependency. It's the integrity of the show that you're able to maintain when you're working from home. And without naming names, right? There's been an incident where the tournament operator was conducting a tournament in the studio, and sometimes operators, obviously, because they want to be in control of everything, they want the talent to fly down to the studio. Yeah. And which is understandable. I'm not saying that's the wrong thing to do. I think that's the right thing to do. But this one time I was casting from home and the studio shut down because they had a power cut. And I'm here live, online. So I don't know what to say about that, man. It's a funny incident, but the point I'm trying to make is you can ask for the sun and the moon and the stars, but you have to deliver upon it. You have to be able to guarantee that, hey, I have all of this in place, and sometimes it might so happen that everything comes falling. Right? It's Murphy's law, right?
Yeah.
Something that can go wrong will go wrong. But you try your best to make sure that does not happen. So if you want to ask for all of that, then make sure that you can deliver upon it.
Absolutely, man. I think tech is something that is almost always overlooked in many cases, like you mentioned, right? And I know this, like you said, anytime I want to have you on, I always say, hey, Mamba is the one I'm least worried about. Like, we've worked so much together and your tech has always been on point, right? That is one side of things. And second is knowing that the caster is going to say the right things and he's got since you're the voice of the brand, the TO, that you're going to be representing in that event, knowing that you're a reliable person also goes a long way, right? Otherwise, I think that was being someone who has been a caster as well as on the TO side. I think that is a worry that we always have, right? Because once the show goes live, then on a live show, there is only so many things you can control. It's at the end of the day, you are going to be at the mercy of the caster and what he says. So I think that reliability, as in terms of both the talent as well as the tech, is something that is often overlooked. And rightly said, when I did do freelance for a short bit, I never had Lee's line. But yes, I get the fact that that is something that does go a long way in giving peace of mind to the TO, and I don't think there is
I'll give you like a very Gujarati example also. So, I understand, look, most of the people involved in the industry are very young and impressionable and they want to look the best and they want to dress up the best and wear expensive brands and whatnot, right? All these events that you might have seen me at, any picture you pull up, right? You'll never see me wear some exorbitantly expensive shoe, which is some 20,000, 30,000, 40,000 shoe. Because I think, look, I know how to dress well, even if I'm wearing some cheap shoe or an expensive shoe, as long as it looks nice, nobody knows, right? And nobody cares. And if that's what I'm going to be judged upon, then I don't even want to be in that place because
the flames are coming
what's the
up.
point? Right. So, no, the reason I'm saying this is because take that money, invest it in a place where you can actually get the returns from, or save that money and invest it, because this last year was rough.
Yeah.
A lot of people were not getting paid or they did not have the gigs, and people did not have money saved either because they were blowing it away somewhere else.
Yeah.
And I think financial responsibility is something I have been obviously talking about in my personal circles, but it's high time that we start talking about this, because last year was a big reality check for a lot of players, for a lot of people in the industry. And I'm not saying this from a place of holier than thou, by the way. No, I do not intend to come off that way if I rub somebody off the wrong way. Look, I wasn't born with this, right? I was taught this. It was ingrained in me from a very young age that be responsible with money, be responsible with whatever you do. So me having a lease line is not just because I can afford it. I've made sure that I can manage to afford it.
Yes.
By making smart decisions with money.
I think that is going to apply to a lot of people in the industry today, right? Because I know of cases where they've been able to make good money but didn't really account for having to pay taxes at the end of the year. It's something as simple as that. Two, like you said, where the economy isn't really very stable. There are always going to be ups and downs, just like with any other industry. And you're going to have to be prepared for a rainy day and ensure that your quality that you're delivering does not really suffer that, because then you're stuck in a loop where you're not able to provide quality, in turn you're not making enough, and then just the cycle just goes on. So completely agree on that part, Mamba. There's of course few more things that I want to touch on here, but let's just go back, start of the journey again, go back to the games you started with. CSGO and PUBG PC thereafter. I don't think that is also something that a lot of people know, that these were titles that you did. You in fact won Caster of the Year in 2018 on the Exhibit Awards, if I'm not mistaken, where I was also one of the fellow nominees.
Yeah, Shade was actually a nominee, by the way. We were both nominated. So at that point, technically, we were competing.
Yes. Against what? I don't know, but
God knows. But it's funny, right? Because anybody who's been around for a while now, like, See, if you're a freelancer, there's two freelancers and there's only one slot. Obviously, you're competing for the slot, but it never felt like that when you talk to somebody, right? Because we understand at the end of the day, it's only business and there's only so much you can do. So, yeah, no, it's funny that we were both nominated back in 2018 when I look back. Yeah.
But and what was funny was, despite that, I think all the years until we did the Riot podcasts together last year, we actually didn't get to share the screen together in all this time. I think it's been
Yeah.
7-8 years where we've known each other, we've done different events. You've been in the front of the cam, I've been behind the scenes, your producer. But then finally the stars took that long to align for it to happen, and that is actually one of the podcasts that I cherish a lot. And I'm glad that we are in another podcast where we get to talk about that podcast.
This would have been a third podcast had I been able to show for the casters one that you've done before. But I think unfortunately I was traveling somewhere.
It would be the fourth.
And I was fourth one. Wait,
we did
was
2
the
Riot
first one?
podcasts.
Oh yeah, fair. But I was pretty upset because I wanted to be there, right? Because it had been a while since I'd spoken to the other boys also, other Free Fire casters. I've been thinking of calling up Aura for quite a while now, but it slips out of my mind when I'm caught up because I've not spoken to him in forever. And he's somebody that I was in constant touch with when Free Fire was a thing.
Right.
Good old days, man, when it was a thing. I miss it sometimes,
He was in fact at the Penta Studios a couple of times last year, and we did get to spend some time with him. Amazing guy. I absolutely love him to bits. I think he's a wonderful human all around as well. And I think there was the events that where I did get to work behind the scenes with you guys. I think what I remember the most was the fact that you guys, according to me, were the best combo, I think, out there. In terms of how well the two of you gelled together. And I don't think I have seen many instances where, it has come close to that, let alone eclipse it. So how did that happen? And how is that camaraderie with Aura? How did that come by?
I think the reason why I cherished all the Free Fire events, even though we know how usually the conversations go in the PC community, because there is a little bit of elitism when it comes. And it's light-hearted elitism. It's not that you look down upon it, but a lot of times when the audience tunes into a different game, right, you know what they spam, Alok de do, Diamond de do, and that's what we make fun about.
Yes.
But the reason I cherish it is because I think with not just Aura, right? I think every single talent that was involved with the game, we had camaraderie to the point where it just felt very natural. Everybody was very polite. Everybody was very open to learning new things, and everybody had the same vision that the product comes first. I've seen talent in my life where they feel like they are the spotlight, and they are the ones who should take the spotlight, not the play, right? And that's you doing injustice not just to the game but to the audience. And you're trying to put yourself first. And I think the fact that we all aligned on it and the fact that we were all working in the same direction is why we got along so well. There were no egos involved ever. And for them to accept me as one of their own, because I came in from a different background. These guys were Free Fire experts. When I came in, I did not know a lot about the game. And for them to help me out there and for them to even take my feedback on how I believe a car should go or a broadcast should go, I think there was a lot of mutual respect in terms of not taking it the wrong way. So when we figured that, hey, this advice actually helps, we just got along really well. I think it's just the idea of having that sort of mutual respect is why we got along so well. And you might note, if there are awards available, right, there are times when there's a final circle fight going on and I've been speaking for 2 minutes. And I could stretch it out for the final fight because I know that's going to end up in the highlight reel. But I wouldn't do it. And the same goes for Aura, same goes for Evil, same goes for Tanya and everybody else involved, right? Salty as well. Because we had that sort of understanding that, no, it's not about me. This is about the game. It's about the play. And if it felt appropriate that, hey, you know what, I've been on for a while and maybe Aura is a little more fresh because I'll have to catch up to my breath. I might not be able to do justice to the play. You pass the torch, right? And they do justice to the play. So there was never this thing that, hey, no, I am better than you, or I need to be in front, or I need to be at the center stage of whatever is happening and I am the better talent. That was never the case. It just did not happen.
I think that comes from maturity, right, Mamba? I think it's at a point where you understand not every moment needs to be capitalized on, or you need to push for that highlight reel. It's just naturally gonna happen as long as you're doing the right things, right? I think that is something that you it's not something you can chase. It's something that just happens. I think all the legendary moments out there on that we keep watching on YouTube. I do this time and again. Having started off as a Dota caster, I go back, I watch the legendary Dota TI moments, right? And all of those moments, I think the best thing about that is none of them feel forced. They have just naturally happened. Some of them mid game, some of them end game. There's no really like a point of time that you can always point out and say, hey, this is when it's going to happen. But it just naturally does. And I think that is what, kind of takes it over the edge and makes it one of the greatest pieces that you would have fans going back to again and again. And I think that at the end of the day, casters have that magic to do that, right? And it's two sets of people who can do it. It's the players through the legendary plays, and the casters just adding that cream on top to bring it all home. So let's talk a little bit about Free Fire, man. You know, you're a hardcore PC guy. Played PC games, almost went pro, and did go pro. We'll get to that part a little later. And casted PC games, and then kaboom! What you're probably known for the most today is being an absolutely amazing Free Fire caster. How did that transition happen?
I remember, I think my first Free Fire event was in 2019. It was the India Today League,
Yes.
FFITL. And so I got a call from this tournament operator, and he was like, hey, we would love to have you on board for this game. And I was honest with them. I said, I have no clue about this game. I've never touched it. I've never seen it. I don't even know what you're talking about. But they were kind enough to put their faith in me. They were like, you know what, you'll figure it out. We have somebody who can catch you up to speed, and it'll be fine. So all I learned was glue wall, what a glue wall would be, and just a few very basic mechanics. I didn't know like what else there was, right? And I did it. That happened. Then eventually when Garena started hiring talent directly, right? Because Garena had this thing where they would directly hire talent. They wouldn't give it out to TOs, right? They would have the TOs execute the event, but they were in complete control of talent. So I get a call from Garena, and I think I did the first gig, which was Free Fire Scrim Wars, if I remember it correctly. Okay. And from that point on, it just became a very regular thing because they had this entire roadmap, right? And then the pandemic had also happened. So when I got the first call from Garena, the event was supposed to be a LAN event, by the way. And pandemic had just started. And I actually turned the event down. I was like, look, I would love to do it, but I'm sorry, I can't make it because of the pandemic. And I feel like I don't think it would be a very wise thing to do right now, because my mom had cancer in 2011. Now she's completely fine. But I was like, no, I will make the most obvious choice here and, make sure that it's all okay. Not that if I lose a gig, I'll probably lose out on an opportunity or whatever, right? So I just wanted to make sure that everybody in my house is healthy, because imagine I travel to an event. And then I come back with COVID, and nobody knew what COVID was at that point. So I was like, it's okay. I'll pass because obvious, right? But then the event shifted online, and they were kind enough to call me back, and they're like, it's happening online, so why don't you come hop on board? And then from that point on, it was just directly dealing with Garena, being a talent, and every time they would just give me a call, I would have a roadmap, I would know what's happening for the next 3 months, and from there it was very smooth sailing.
I think I do remember this, especially just after COVID, right? I think that was when we had. I think that was when BGMI got PUBG Mobile rather got banned, and then immediately thereafter we saw Garena almost double the events that they were doing. Right? I remember there was a point of time where there would be it's broadcast in the morning. We take a short break, and there'll be another broadcast later right after that. There's like esports.
But I don't think there were two publisher events happening at the same time. Publisher only did one event.
Not publisher events, but then the calendar was like so jam packed with, and of
Yeah.
course there was a lot of variety as well, right? I've seen ones where you've casted events and then you're playing in one of them as well. You
Oh,
have other
yes.
casters there, so there
Yeah.
was like a lot of things happening, and really glad that that was the perfect timing also for you to get into that and then kind of craft your way there in Free Fire. But then something that we didn't foresee happened. Free Fire got banned. How has your time been since then? It did get announced as well, saying September 5th was when it was supposed to get
I mean,
released.
technically, they announced September 5th. They've not mentioned the year.
I mean,
I'm just kidding. Garina, if you're watching me and if you don't
sorry.
hire me after this, I'm going to be very sad. Okay, don't do that to me. I'm waiting for it to come back.
I had nothing
But
to do with this. Sorry, Greg. I don't know.
wow, wow. But anyway,
Yes.
So I think the first month it did not hit me. I was like, yeah, it got banned. BGMI came back. Free Fire will also come back because Free Fire was a very big. India was one of the top regions for the game, so it made no sense for it to stay away for as long as it has been. And I was like, cool. And then imagine you have like 70% of your calendar, 70% of your revenues Free Fire, and everything else suddenly just goes away. But at that point, I'd been doing events consistently for a year and a half. So to me, it felt like a vacation for the first month. I was like, cool, I'll go play cricket. So I started playing local tournaments here with cricket because I am a fan of cricket. My elder brother was a professional cricketer, and I can play a bit. Like I've not been formally trained, but I would go sometimes. I wouldn't go. Then my bhai would help me out. So I can actually hold a bat and swing it, and I'm decent enough at it. So I started playing these local registered tournaments, and spent like I think 2 months doing that. And then it slowly started hitting me. And this one time I even broke down with my parents where I was very stressed out. I was like, what do I do now? Because I have no clue, right? What the is going to happen? You can beep it out. My bad. But the point I'm trying to make is that I didn't know what was going to happen. And I was pretty stressed out. And my parents are like, it's okay, it'll happen. And then obviously Valorant happened. And then they started doing a lot of events. And 2022, I took some 50 odd flights that year. And phenomenal amount of events. But that the initial couple of months were very stressful because there was no official communication. I think the only official communication I had with Garena was the night it got banned, the next morning FFIC was supposed to start.
Right.
And they had, I think, some 70 lakh prize pool. So it was a very big event.
Yeah.
And I get a call, they're like, hey, the game's, we're postponing the tournament. Right? But it was corporate speak. I knew what postponing meant.
Right.
Because I think after a point in the industry, you understand what it is. And I wouldn't blame them for it because even they were uncertain on what is happening, right?
Absolutely.
So I don't hold it against them. And I was requested to speak to the other casters also. And I spoke to them. I was like, hey, the event tomorrow is going to probably be called off. And then I spoke to them on a personal basis and I said, okay, this is going to be a tough couple of months because see, I had the privilege to be involved with other titles where if Free Fire went away, I could do Valorant.
Yeah.
But for somebody like an Aura, for somebody like an Evil, who for them, Free Fire was their bread and butter.
Yeah.
So more than myself, I was feeling sad for them because the game that they've built their careers around, right, just did not exist anymore. So yeah, no, it was pretty tough. I would definitely say it was pretty tough, not just because it took away some 70% of my revenue, but also because of the fact that the game meant so much to all of us.
You're right. Absolutely, man. And now there is still news coming out, by the way, of Free Fire's return. It seems like it's very close to it.
I have no clue
There
what
was
you're
the
talking
ET
about.
article that came out a few days back with the data centers, it's being shifted. So, of course, I'm just going on a limb here, but Mamba is the guy who has all the answers. So we'll just ask him.
Funnily, I do not. That was literally the last time I spoke to them. And except for that, I spoke to them once when Free Fire World Series happened and there was a Hindi desk. But yeah, that's about it. And I think after that, though, they've internally changed most of the staff also. Most of the people have either shifted to new roles, new people have come in. So yeah, no, I genuinely do not have a lot of details, which is tragic because I would love to know, right? Because I know for a fact the day there's a Free Fire LAN event and I'm working it, I know I'm going to have the power to change my own life and my own life's course if that one LAN event happens because I know what it's going to be like.
Yeah. And with the comeback now, that is just gonna blow the roof off. I'm sure of it.
Yeah.
The first few ones are gonna be amazing. Not that the rest of them won't be, but that is something I know a lot of fans are gonna be waiting to get to experience that again after the break. So, all right, you did mention direct relations with Garena, right, as a talent. How important is that? As compared to how it works with the other events where you're gonna have to work through TO for publisher events as well. Is that something that's game breaking? Is that really good?
It's a double-edged sword. So, see, a free market is always the better choice, but at the same time, then there are. So it depends on how grown is the esports economy in the region that you're in, right? How much leeway do you have? So as an organizer right now, I think the biggest question everybody has is how do we cut down costs, and that's been the conversation, that's been the talk of the town. So for tournament operators, they would obviously want to have the biggest margin possible so they can actually be profitable and make money off of it. And for publishers, it's very different for their own events, because for publishers, it's not about making that money back from that event, by the way. For them, it's a marketing exercise, right? So they want to put the best faces forward. So when the publisher is directly involved in their hiring talent, you don't have to worry about being paid on time. I think Garena, the working experience was so phenomenal, right? Not a single missed payment, not a time when the payment was delayed. It was brilliant. The fact that the publisher was choosing talent directly, where you did not have to worry about, hey, whether or not this TO will choose me because I'm charging X amount of rates, right? If they find it too expensive, or if they're going to find it not, if it doesn't fit their budget, right? So what Garena came up with was a very simple solution. There are 2 tiers in which they pay talent. Everybody was paid the same rate. If you're in tier 1, you get paid this amount of money, and if you're newer, you get paid so there are 2 pay grades basically.
Right.
So I think Aura and we made the same amount of money, exact same. Like there was no difference, which I think is phenomenal. I think it's very good, because at that point you're not even worried, and it was great money, by the way. Yeah. So the good thing I'd say is that publisher in control, they will choose the best possible faces that represent their product. You don't have to worry about whether or not I'm charging the right rates. The potential negative would be, imagine you do something where you end up on the bad side of the publisher. Then you're potentially losing on every single event that happens.
Yeah.
Imagine if there are 3 tournament operators doing events for a game, executing events for a game, and you don't work with one tournament operator, you still have 2 other operators to go to. But if you end up in the bad books of a publisher, then you're done for. You literally have to be like, tata, bye-bye, right? Yeah. So I think there's the pros and the cons, but for people who are sensible enough to not end up in the bad books of them, I think I prefer it. Because, and I'm saying this with, I'm saying this because there's a personal gain in there for me.
Yeah.
Because when I walked into Free Fire, I was the most polished talent. There were not a lot of talents in the first place. They were experts of the game, but they were not talent, right? So I brought the flair, they brought the expertise, and we all gelled well, and then we rubbed off on each other. So for me, it was very good, was because I knew why I was being hired. I knew exactly the reason behind me being present in front of the camera for that product. So I prefer it, where I don't have to worry about negotiating my rates with the tournament operator, or whether or not I'll be getting paid on time, whether or not I'll get paid. There's an event I worked last year for which I've not been paid yet. It's been 8 months. So is this what it is?
Do you want to go ahead and name the event?
There's no point.
Right.
Because as much as I would love to call them out, all it's going to achieve is burning that bridge, and not that I would work with them if they don't clear that payment. But look, it's a very small industry, and I think the more tactful thing to do and the more smart thing to do is you don't air your dirty laundry unless it's absolutely necessary.
Right. But I think that is also something that is very problematic for casters, right? Especially ones who are in freelance, because at the end of the day, just like anybody else, you want to plan your finances as well. And knowing that this is an event that you've already delivered, and to have it kind of get delayed, sometimes even indefinitely, it surely does become a problem in the long run, right? How do you address that? Is it just the fact that you do it at a scale where you're doing just so many events that if some doesn't happen, you still learn to deal with it, or are there any contingencies that you can put in place to kind of deal with this?
So this event, the tournament operator wasn't from India, so I couldn't do a lot, right?
Right.
So if it's an Indian operator or if it's a publisher that I can connect to. So I'll give you an example of another event without naming the game or the publisher or the whatever, right? So I was doing an event where I was trying to reach out for payments. The payment was very late. I wasn't getting any updates. Eventually, I wasn't getting replies. So I was patient enough, and then I took a few of those screenshots and I passed it on to my point of contact, who was working at the publisher's office, and they looked into the issue. So I went from needing to get paid from the TO to the publisher getting involved and then getting paid. And it's out there on my Substack article also that you've read.
We'll leave it in the description of this video, by the way. You can go read it out at length.
I think it's very important for aspiring casters to understand the dark side of it also. The way I deal with it, obviously there's volume where you don't have to worry about it if it doesn't come through, but it's hard-earned money, right? Everybody wants it.
Yeah.
And so do I. Even if I'm making millions of dollars, money is money. $500 is $500, $1,000 is $1,000. So the way I deal with it is to reach out to the person where they can't say no, right? Eventually, if it's crossed all bounds. And I've only had to reach out to a publisher for a TO once in my entire career. I've never had to do it. Apart from that, I'm usually just very patient, and every single TO in the country, you're friends with everyone, because when they were not a tournament operator, you used to play games together, right? So it's usually a matter of just it's usually just a matter of calling them on a personal note, not even calling them on as a professional. It was like, hey, I'm having this trouble. You just call them up, and imagine if you and I were having this conversation. Not that, by the way, it's happened with Penta, just as a disclaimer. But imagine I'm like, shit, hey, dude, I need you to help me out here, and just I try to understand it from my perspective. It doesn't feel nice asking for the money that you've earned already and you've delivered upon the product. So just help me out here and figure it out, instead of burning bridges and straight up putting your foot down, because it's not the smart thing to do. Eventually, sometimes you do have to air your dirty laundry. I think this one time I did it.
Yes.
But it was, I did it because it was...
Twitter kind of exploded at that time.
And the reason I had to do it was because it was so unprofessional that I just couldn't, because see, I knew once I go that route, the bridge is burned forever. There's no going back, unless somehow I become so popular where they're like, hey. So I'll tell you that I have this theory, right, in gaming and in life also. Right now I have about 100,000 subscribers on YouTube.
Right.
Imagine tomorrow morning I wake up with 15 million. The first person who's calling me is the same person who screwed me over.
Yeah.
Because at that point it becomes business. So if you're big enough, they are willing to look the other way. They're willing to overlook problems, and you'll have your way. And it is what it is. It's a shallow business to be in, but money is money and business is business. So I've learned to segregate the two. I've learned to not hold it against them. But if they've really rubbed me off the wrong way, and I think there's a sense of pride which has been hurt, where you've been strung along for so long and then you get ghosted. Correct. That's when I put my foot down and be like, you know what, even if you're paying me $1 million, I don't want to do it, because it's just a matter of principle. And the reason why I went public was because I could afford to go public.
Yeah.
The most they could do is threaten me with never hiring me, but I couldn't give a shit less about not being hired again. Because if I don't do it from a point of privilege, somebody who's actually trying to make a career out of this, how are they going to do it? Because they will always be scared of going public about this. So I've always tried where I can voice an opinion where I know that even if it comes back to bite me on my backside, I can afford it.
Correct.
It's always a question of, can you afford to go public? Right? It's not about just having a principle.
Yeah.
It's knowing that if you don't get gigs from these guys, it's okay. You can still survive.
100%, man. And I think that more than an eye-opener, I think that was more of a inner circle thing where people are like, hey, this has happened to us at some point of time, right? But it was I think one of the first times where it was voiced in a way where, you know, all the details are there. It wasn't just said. There was like, you know, a detailed thread with proof.
A dossier of
there was a complete breakdown. Could have been an easy 2-hour video with that as well, Mamba.
Yeah, but like that wasn't the point I was trying to make, right? I wasn't trying to get views on it. I was trying to make a point with the decision makers in the industry and the stakeholders in the industry who were on Twitter. And for me, what was important was to get the message across. I never wanted clicks on it. I was just like, hey, this is out there, and it's not just for the talent, but it's also for everybody else to know that please don't pull shit like this.
Yeah.
Don't do it. And if anybody else is planning to do it, then I don't want to be there. So I'll tell you another story, again, without naming names. So there was this event where I was being invited for, and they strung me along for a while. And they, like 2 days before the shoot that was supposed to happen in the studio, they're like, okay, tomorrow, day after tomorrow, can you come down to Bombay?
Okay.
I was like, no, I can't. You can't come up to me 48 hours before the shoot and when you'll be talking to me for a month.
Correct.
And be like, show up day after. And I'll tell you how much that event cost me. It cost me 2 lakhs. So I turned down 2 lakhs, not because the money wasn't important. The money was great, right? And I was being paid the highest ever rates I had ever been paid. They were willing to pay me 40,000 a day in India, 40 or 45, I don't remember, for a studio event, which nobody usually pays, right? It's very rarely somebody gets paid that much in India.
Correct.
So I was like, no, I can't do it. I won't come because you can't just expect me to show up 48 hours prior. So I turned down that event, and I obviously had moments where I doubted my decision. But then when I realized they hadn't paid talent after a year. So I spoke to the talent who worked that event, and that talent had to go public for them to get paid, where they were like, no, we will pay you, just take the tweet down. But then why were you not responding when the talent was reaching out to you?
Right.
So, like, what is it that you're trying to do, right? So I was glad that I didn't do it because I didn't want to go through the trouble of having to wait for a year to get paid. Correct. I'm more than happy making just enough money where I'm satisfied and I'm fulfilled with my life. And there's a reason I don't move out of Surat. Because life here is good. Yeah. And so that I can cut off all this crap without having to worry about, oh my God, how am I going to pay rent, right?
Correct.
And it's not coming from a place of being an elitist. It's just making smarter choices because I can afford to make these choices.
Correct. Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, I think there is no value you can put on peace of mind, right? After you have your bare minimum that you want to make, after that, it's like a conversation we had as well recently. I said, it is luxury after a certain level, and you would rather have peace of mind, man, more than anything.
I want to add one more thing, right? So I'll actually maybe share it with you also if you want to show it on screen while I'm talking about this. So I had this Twitter thread that I put out, and it was on Instagram, right? So there's this cafe I keep going to a lot in Surat, it's Mirakin. I think everybody knows it. Okay. So this one night I was just there randomly chilling, right? Just all alone because I go there to switch off. And there's this guy who walks past and he looks at me and then he walks past again. Like, you're that guy who's been hosting these Valorant events, right? Now see, it's not something new for me to be recognized if I come to an event or for people to ask for pictures or an autograph, right? But for it to happen in Surat was a big deal for me because I used to always envision this when I was younger. What if this happens? What if I'm walking down the street and somebody recognizes me? So it felt like a dream come true, right?
Right.
So I made this entire Twitter thread and I'll paraphrase it right now. I said, gaming and esports was always about passion. It was always about chasing this dream and about knowing that I can make it. It was never about the money or the fame. Of course, money is important. Fame's great because it opens up doors for you otherwise which would not be open for you. I'm not an idiot that, you get certain privileges when you have a name that is recognized in the industry.
Yeah.
So, but that was never the goal. And that night, in that moment, I felt like I made it. That is all I wanted to do. I was 25. I checked off everything off my checklist in my life, right? And fame was never the goal. It was never the focus. It was always a byproduct. And that is what it is always going to be, right? So when I go for an event or when I turn down an event, I'm not thinking of, oh my God, I'm going to be more famous. I'll be able to make more money. The pros and cons I'm weighing is, sure, it's great money, but does it bring me true fulfillment? If it doesn't, then it's okay.
Yeah.
That's fine. So the reason I'm able to also take these decisions, which might come off as very difficult decisions for a lot of people, is because I never looked at how many people know me, right? It's always, what are the people? Who are these people that know me?
Yeah.
I don't think there's any event, any publisher in the country right now where I walk in and they might not know me. Yeah. I don't have 1 million followers on Instagram. I have 16,000 followers or 15,000 followers. But everybody who's supposed to know me knows me. And that's enough for me. I couldn't care less about walking out with bodyguards or having some fancy car to drive. Of course, I'd love it. If someday it happens, I would love to have it. But I couldn't care less about it.
Which is your dream car? Now that we're talking about it.
It's a Lexus. I forgot the model, but it's funny because I have this theory about cars where I think the most expensive car I'll ever want to buy is a Fortuner. Okay. Because I think after beyond that point, it's just luxuries that, do you really need it? It's really just a thing where you have money to throw away. You have a disposable income where you can buy me back, right?
Right.
So if I ever end up in a position in life where I have some hundreds of crores lying around somewhere and I can afford a Maybach, I'll buy it. But practically speaking, it's a Fortuner. But like a dream car would be a Lexus,
Got it.
a sedan.
Fingers crossed, Mamba, that you have one very soon.
Yeah.
The day you have it,
Yeah.
I'm going to come down to Surat.
I will fly you down to Surat. I'll be like, if I can afford a Lexus, I'm sure I can afford a few flight tickets.
After that, I can start a boarding pass collection of my own every time
Yeah.
Mamba has flown me to Surat. So
Yeah, 100%, dude. 100%. I'd be like, shit, dude, weekend, I'm free. You want to go grab a coffee? You're like, sure. And you're driving down to the airport, come to Surat, have a coffee, and same evening you can fly back.
So, for audiences are wondering, what are we talking about? So, Mamba has a hobby of collecting boarding passes of
Yeah.
events he's been to where he's working.
Yeah.
So, tell us a little bit about how that happened, and do you have that stack around? How big is it? Can we have a look?
I do have it. You'll have to excuse me for 1 minute.
Cut!
So, sorry, this stack should have been like twice or thrice as thick, but lately all the boarding passes have been digital.
Oh,
So I
yes,
started
and then
collecting
now
these
you're on
when-
paperless, right? But now that you're collecting it, aren't you still going down to the check-in counter and asking the guys, hey, can I
No, but
have...
after, so I think after I collected this stack, right, before it went paperless,
Oh, wow, that's
I was
a
like, I
lot.
have enough. I think I have enough, right? So it's obviously a very good memory, and I remember most of these passes also. I remember when so there's this one pass, if I can, yeah. So I treated myself, and I think, yeah, so this is when I quit my job in 2019 as a talent for this tournament operator that I was working at. Right? And I treated myself to this business class ticket. I upgraded myself. I was like, cool, I've earned it. I've spent
Wow.
2 years. I've done all of this. And treat yourself. It's okay.
Nice.
And I was so excited to go to the lounge and have food. Turns out Air India lounge did not serve food before 5:30 and my boarding time was 5:20. But that's not the point.
RIP.
The point is, this collection obviously is pretty thick. If I printed all the rest of the passes, I think it would have been twice or thrice as thick. But it's just like a good memory, right? Like
Yeah.
at this point, I don't even keep them all. But every time I get an opportunity, I still keep it so that one day I can show it to my kids. Like, hey, this is the thing. This happened.
Very cool, man. Very cool. All right. Let's talk a little bit about your hosting gigs, man. Like you said, the Valorant community knows you as a host, and I know you've done a lot of hosting events as well. But player, caster, host, how did that happen?
So commentary, I told you how it happened, casting.
Yeah.
But I was casting this event called RG Masters in 2016 itself at, I'll tell you which cafe it was. It was in Bangalore only. Blitz.
Blitz Zone.
Yes, Blitz Zone.
Yeah.
I was there casting, the event was happening there. And it was a very simple setup, just OBS on one PC camera, and I'm only handling the broadcast. I'm only commentating, I'm only observing.
Okay, I'm going to stop you there for a second. Like, that brings back such good memories. Like, people today think, there is this funny thing that, the chat always says that I read, even now in broadcast, right? They said, casters, game chalu karo. People today think that is funny. They have no idea how close it was to reality. Back then. The casters would be the lobby host. You would start it, you would observe it, you would start the broadcast, you would change the overlays, you would cast as well. So, I'm sorry for
I still
breaking,
remember.
but-
No, I'm just recalling everything. I remember Kunal, who works at Nordwind Gaming, used to send me L screens, right? When so back in the day of ESL India Premiership, right, before it was all profesh, 2016, 2017 times, the caster used to run the broadcast. I would have those files sent over to me on Skype.
Yeah.
Because Discord wasn't a thing that people were using.
Correct.
So I would load it up, I would set it up, I would be the one broadcasting, I would be the one commentating, and I would be the one observing all alone. There's no co-caster also. Then eventually you move to like a dedicated observer, then a co-caster and whatnot, and then things now with VMix, it's become all professional. So all this bougie treatment that talent gets right now that they've been spoiled by We're like, "Arey talent, आओ." It's like, घर में दामाद आया, अरे आओ, talent भाई साहब आओ, we'll treat you very nice.
Definition
Listen,
of why
I'm telling you.
casters are called talent and not casters back in the day. They had real talent. They would do everything.
Most casters are catching strays right now. Also, by the way, there's this misconception that casting is just yelling in the mic, which is not the case. Please stop. I can't stress on this enough. Please, for the love of God, stop yelling in the goddamn mic, because half of us watch the stream on mute because it makes our ears bleed. I remember I was at this LAN event and I told one of the casters please pace yourself, and I was hosting it.
Right.
I wasn't even casting. I told him, please pace yourself, because I knew it was one of his first few LAN events. Otherwise, you will not be able to cast it because it's a multi-day LAN event.
Right.
They're like, no, Mamba, I got this, bro. I was like, cool, if that's what you want. See, Shade, you see it, I see it, we know. We know, like, we can just foresee it, right? Because we made the mistakes.
Yeah.
When the stakes were lower. It's not that, hum antaryamin, we just know. So, day 2, day 3 comes around. The organizer walks up to me and like, Mamba, can you cover for a map? Because he can't, he's lost his mind.
He's just basically croaking at
So
that point.
I do it. And then I walk up to him like, I don't want to be the guy to tell you that I told you so, but I told you so. And it just happens, right? So please, like, trust me, it's not how loud you are, it's how you portray things, right? Yeah. It's how you say things. So, for example, I still remember there was this event, I think it was Reykjavik, and Tens was on Icebox running a riot. And the caster said, it's just Tens' world and we're living in it.
Right.
It's a very impactful line. I'm sure there are moments in Counter-Strike also, inhuman reactions, which has become a meme, then where Hiko turned around 180 get right on mid doors on Dust 2. Yep. When Simple, it's giving me goosebumps when I think of it. When Simple dropped down on Cash on B side, right, and got 2 guys no scoped, and Bardolph went, Simple, this is not FPL, it's a major, right? It's a major, it's not FPL. I might be butchering it, but that was the case. Then Dennis got that ace from Cash Kitchen in B main, where the caster said something very unique, very, very fun. And Snacks, again, one more example, when he was in New York, right? And Snacks, obviously big guy. And New York is called the Big Apple. And on Cobble, he got an ace in the pistol round, and he said, Snacks is in the Big Apple and he's hungry. Right? It's these things. It's not about, oh my God, kya shot mara guys, maza aa gaya. That's not broadcasting. That's you yelling into a mic. Yeah. So a lot of times when people see, okay, I have this rule that I don't like to comment about casters publicly, because one, obviously it's going to piss off the caster, and I know I'm going to meet him someday or the other, and I will have that conversation with him in person happily. But what it might get perceived as is that Mamba is jealous, or maybe this talent does not like this talent. But they don't know what the fuck is happening in the back end, right? Because maybe somebody has quoted less, I've quoted more, and because I'm not getting that gig, they might feel like, I'm saying this because I did not get the gig. Yeah. It's not that. It really is not that. It's because we care about the art. But that's why I made it a rule that I would just never publicly speak about it. But obviously, if I'm not taking names and I have all the all the rights in the world to at least share my experiences. So I feel like there's so much you can do, right? There's one thing that casters don't use is also modulating their voice enough. It's all just loud, where your mic is tearing up.
Correct.
And it's just not enjoyable.
And in fact, I was kind of also at fault doing this at the early part of my career. I think, the realization came in very early, where, I learned it is not just about my stamina, right? It's also the stamina of the viewer. When you're hyping it up, the viewer also is getting hyped up. And if you want your viewer to sit through multiple hours of broadcast, you can't wear your viewer down as well, right? It's gonna have to be a pleasant experience. He's sitting, he has his ups and downs, but those ups cannot be ups all the time. Otherwise, he's just gonna get worn out, and in an hour he's gonna head out. And it's only now where we see shorter broadcasts. Like you said earlier, back in the day, broadcasts meant 8 maps, 9 maps. It just goes on forever. So for a viewer to actually sit through all of it, you need to manage his stamina as well along with yours. So it was very critical.
So I've made a rule, right? I think we've spoken about this. Now it's come to a point where there are times when there are 3 best of 3s a day.
Yeah.
I politely turn them down. I tell them, listen, I can commit to 2 best of 3s.
Yeah.
And it's not that I don't have the stamina or the pace to do three best of threes, but I think the product will suffer. And I remember I was doing this event. The same tier was organizing both the events, and it was an event by Oris. So they were doing a pro league, and then they were doing a female league, right?
Okay.
So I was already doing the female league, and I got offered the pro league. So I picked up the female league before that. So when I was offered the gig, I was more than happy to do it, and it would have more than doubled my income for that span, right? But I told him, listen, I would love to do it, but after that, I think I agreed. I don't remember the exact specifics of the deal, but I was speaking to Manoj. You know Manoj, right? So Manoj and we had that conversation. I told him, listen, I don't want to do it because I feel like the product's going to suffer.
Yeah.
It makes no sense.
Absolutely, man. I think that is at the end of the day, it's not just about doing the event. One, you're looking at the event and looking at the end product, right? And secondly, this is something that eventually will also come back to you. It's like you want your cast to be at a particular quality, and for whatever reason you're not able to deliver it, and there is a work around it. I think that's for sure something that you got to take. In fact, that first Free Fire event, I was asked to cast in that as well, but I just got the heads up a week before. And I said, I don't want to do it. I said, there is a particular quality that is expected from me every time I step up. And because I don't know the game and I don't think, and to be fair, yes, though I've casted multiple games, there have been steep learning curves for each one of them. I've had at least 2 or 3 months of playing the game, talking to people who know the game well, talking to fellow casters before even I've jumped in it. So I didn't have the time that I said, I don't want to do it because I don't think I'll be able to deliver the quality, which is why you're approaching me in the first place. So I think, that goes a long way to show the kind of dependable person you are eventually when you do say yes to events. So, all right. So that's hosting events. Now let's get to your pro player side, man. Like,
I mean, by technical definition, I was never paid a salary. But I was playing at the highest level possible in the country.
So, which is even initially I said, pro player, yes or no, we will get to that later. But you did play high level of competitive, right? And you've done this, I believe, in Valorant, and you've had a couple of crazy matches as well. Something that I did not know was you were part of the original lineup of paratroops. I did not know that. And you've had a couple of amazing games versus a couple of top teams as well, teams that GE. I was told that, it was a winning moment. It was a heartbreaking choke that so close yet so far moment. Could you elaborate on that?
So we lost 2-1 to them, right? And I remember third map is the map where I choked on Ascent, and that's why we lost because it was very close. I remember this one down on I was playing Omen on Ascent on mid, and I think I whiffed a shot. That's what cost us the match.
Right.
Because then it just started snowballing, right?
Right.
And it was very important because global esports at that point, right, even with Rossi and everybody else, were just a bunch of 5 dudes, random dudes who decided to, participate in the tournament. And understandable, the game was still very new, right? So the meta hadn't developed. But it came down to raw skill. So we lost to them 2-1 in a best of 3. And but still to pull that map off was very satisfying because we played a grand total of 1 scrim before we got into the tournament. And the entire duration we were together, we played only 1 scrim. And it was all vibes, right? We go to the server, it's all were vibing, like, let's do this, let's do that. Right? Bingso was the IGL, you would call whatever you wanted to. And it would work. It would work, right? So it was so brilliant, and it was so gratifying to see that, hey, we pulled off a map off of them. But then we played against Godlike, and we beat them 2-0. One map was single digits. Then we played against Noble. I think we beat Noble also. I don't remember exactly. I think we beat Noble. Okay. And where there was Hika, there was Rex, there were a few other guys. And Hika and I, every time we meet, right, we reminisce the days because Hika had seen me play CS also, but I didn't know him back in CS.
Okay.
So Hika used to play a race for Noble. And the way I would counter him, right, I remember on Bind, I have very specifically done this. Hika was being a pain in the ass, right? And he would satchel in, and he was really annoying to counter. So this one round on B side, I was anchoring B with Omen. So I knew he had an altar he wanted to satchel in.
Right.
So instead of playing bind on site, I went to CT door, hugged the left wall. And the moment I hear the satchel, right, I was not aiming at the window, by the way. I was not aiming at hookah. I was aiming up where he would satchel.
Right.
So the moment he pops the first satchel and goes up, I flash him mid-air. He's in the middle of like somewhere on B side and he can't see anything. And then you just pick him off. You pick him off. And every time he meets me, he's like, Mama, you were mad annoying, dude. You kept flashing me mid-air. I didn't know what to do. Like, what do I do, dude? Because see, mechanically he was far better than I was, right? He was very superior. The only thing I had was to find some sort of an advantage where I could actually go and take him on.
Yeah.
So, funny memories, right? Now, even now when we meet, we reminisce old moments and we have fun.
And you do, you do keep playing rank games with fellow professional players, right? You've been
So I hadn't played with them for a very long time.
Okay.
So this happened because there was a time for 3 months I did not touch Valorant also.
I see.
Because I felt burnt out. And so the last time I was Immortal was when I was playing and competing in this act. I was like, you know what? Screw it. I want to go back to Immortal. I just want to be there because it'll be gratifying for me to still feel that I have it, right?
Yeah.
So I get back to Immortal. I get queued up with Antidote, Rio, one more guy. And then, so very recently, 2 days ago, I played with them and then we actually queued properly. We got on Discord. It was me, RVK, Anti, Rio, and Madhuja. So we got along together. So once in a while we do play, but there was a patch where I did not play because I was traveling for events and whatnot. But if there is time and if there's an opportunity, we absolutely get cracking. But you can see the difference. Now you can see like, hey, they've advanced way too ahead and now you're a little rusty. So I see them make plays. I'm like, ye kar raha hai. I can also do it. But then I try to do it. And then it doesn't happen. It happened on Breeze only 2 days ago. Anti is standing with KO, is trying to flash me name and I have an op and I'm trying to flash peek it. I peeked before his flash and dashed into the enemy. So Anti like, Mama, kya kar raha hai? I'm like, sorry, yaar, maaf karo yaar. But Anti is also very kind because he always recalls this team called Simplex Gaming, where I had a surgery and I had to play on my knees and Anti was playing against us for Invisible Wings. No, JMD, sorry. And we were playing Inferno and we beat him. So from that point on, he always knew that bhai ghutne pe baitha tha, match jeeta, and he always refers to it. And I think it's a show of mutual respect because look, he knows he can kick my ass 7 ways to Sunday if he plays now, right? But just knowing that, hey, there was this guy who used to play and now he's transitioned to a different role. I do appreciate it. I think it's a lot of fun.
Absolutely true, man. Talking about Valo, right? On the flip side now, there is CS2. You're someone who started playing a lot of CSGO and then casting it at the start of your journey. Now there is CS2. How do you see that community developing in India? And do you think there's ever going to be a point where it eclipses Valo?
No. Just plain out no, because you need to look at the demographic that Valorant targets also, right? CS anyway is not a very welcoming game, has a high entry barrier, has a higher skill ceiling. With Valo, I feel like there's a very low entry barrier. It's also very appealing to a broader spectrum of audience because of the lore, because of how colorful it is, how cool the characters are. There's a larger female player share in Valorant, which does not exist for CS, right? So CS is mostly boys who play, and it's not as appealing. It's not as welcoming also. I'm sure female gamers face their fair share of issues with Valorant, with Mumbai servers being toxic and whatnot. But it's still overall very welcoming, right?
Yeah.
So I don't see how Valorant would be able to eclipse CSGO in India, or CS2 in India rather, because the math doesn't add up.
Yeah. And of course, there are other factors as well where, the publisher is here. There is a lot of localized content that is coming out as well for Indian audiences. So, the drive is just there to keep playing.
As a matter of fact, I'm working on localized content. Now I've shifted from my content from English to Hindi just for Valorant.
Right. Oh. So, and of course, you were one of the guys who were casting in Hindi, right? For Free Fire.
Yeah.
For majority of it. So, I know this is like news for Valorant guys, but we've known you as a Hindi talent on the Free Fire desk. So it's for you, it's a transition but for the Valorant audiences, it's something that is absolutely new. So now We've talked about playing competitively. Content creation. How much of a focus is that going to be for you moving ahead, Mamba?
After the last year, right, where talk at the time was this term called esports winter and whatnot,
Yeah.
and how TOs made the decisions. I figured as much by talking to people, talking not just to operators, but brands also are investing money in events, right?
Yeah.
See, at the end of the day, simple formula is more eyeballs, more ad revenue, more money to make.
Yeah.
And ad could be brand deals or anything, right? And there was a point in time where talent and the way a commentator presented themselves, at least I'm talking about India, by the way, I'm not talking about global events because it doesn't apply there. It did matter. The audience also cared. Right now, it's come to a point where the audience is going to watch it regardless because there's a new set of audience which has never experienced what creme de la creme is.
Yeah.
So the decisions are being made. Decisions are being made on the fact that hey, they're charging the same rate, but this guy's more popular. Let's get him because he brings in more eyeballs. And I do not want to play the victim here. I feel like if that's the game I had to play, then be it. I'll play that game because I can't complain about the rules of the game, right? It's just what it is. It's not against me or against you or against any person. It's the objective reality of being able to survive in this industry. So I decided this last year. So I took a sabbatical last year, by the way. And anyway, I knew there were no events coming up. So I was like, cool, I've been working for a while now. Let me sit down and do nothing for a year. So all the entire year I was reading books, doing this and that. If you check my Instagram also, most of my posts now are not event-based posts. It's just me doing something random, right?
Yeah.
So there was a point where I considered UPSC also. Like I'll prepare for UPSC and maybe switch to civil services. So I had that conversation with my parents and I was like, if I do that, I'll have to commit 3 years of my life and quit esports and gaming entirely and only focus on this for 3 years.
Yeah.
And I sat on that decision for a week because my parents were like, if you want to do that, do that. But then eventually my parents again said, look, if you're worried about having food on the table, roof over your head, and what will you do? Stop worrying about that. That's been taken care of. What is it that you really want to do? Because you understand gaming really well to a certain degree. You've been on YouTube since 2009. I even had a job at Gosu Gamers as a content producer. So the skill is there, right? But they said, if you truly enjoy this, then don't bother yourself with civil services because assume that you don't get through. At 30, do you really want to restart your life?
Yeah.
After having closed doors on this. And it made sense to me. And obviously, I'm very grateful also for having a family that's so supportive now.
Yeah.
Because I know for a fact there'll be people in the comments like, Mamba made it because he had a supportive family. No, humko bhi jhoot bolna padta, humko bhi chipana padta. Where my mom would walk in to check in on me when I was in 12th and I was playing a scrim at 2 a.m. I would switch off my monitor and jump in bed because I knew my mom would beat my ass if she found out I was playing a game at 2 a.m. So they were like, cool, just do this. And the point which was very important was they said, look, if you're willing to be that disciplined for 3 years with UPS, you might as well be just as disciplined, but with content.
Right.
So I've made content my number one priority, not commentating, not hosting, not anything else. And of course, I'm not saying that I wouldn't do it, right? If I got a call and they're like, hey, Mamba, we want you to, I'll be more than happy to do it.
Right.
That's not a priority. I want to focus more on content. I want to focus on building that audience because I know if my skill as a host or as a talent is not going anywhere.
Yeah.
But if I have the numbers to back it up, then I'm the most obvious choice. Like there's no reason for me to not be at an event.
Correct.
And so for the next 3 years, I've made content my priority, like the number one priority.
Okay. Is there any sneak peeks of what we can expect on the content front?
Right now I'm making very, very simple. I'll tell you, I think of it in terms of the demographic that I'm targeting. And I'm trying to target the more casual audience rather than the more professional audience because I feel like that's the fringe, right? Pro players, esports is the fringe. Yeah. That's not gaming. Now I had to unlearn all of that because I started straight up jump competing, right? So for me, gaming was competing. But then I realized it's probably like 5-10% people who actually compete and 90% of the people don't even care. Yeah. So I have started making tutorial content in terms of how to get better at the game or how to do this or that because I used to make it for CS. And that's where I've started. And I think the first month itself, I clocked 100,000 views from my inactive channel was 8,000 views a month and straight up scaling to 100,000 in just 1 month, right? Right. And then I had to stop because there were a few things right now happening and my editor was also away. So now I'll start again tomorrow. And from that point on, there's no stopping. I've been streaming also. So the idea is to get my channel to the point where I can get a brand deal. And once I have a brand deal, then it's a smooth sailing.
Got it.
Because I did have brand deals. I had Cooler Master and there's this PC retailer in Ahmedabad called TLG Gaming.
Right.
So I did have 2 brands when I was streaming, but I was trying to juggle between Free Fire and streaming, and I had to eventually choose between the both, and I decided to go with commentating. But now I'm back to where I started, content.
Life goes a circle. So
Yeah.
awesome. Let's talk about the cafe scene in Surat. So growing up, cafes for me were something that are very close to my heart, right? Zapax specifically, Zapax and Reliance Web Worlds.
Wow,
I think
you're
that was
bringing back
where
memories, bro.
gaming started for me. That I spent hours and
Zapac.
hours, all my weekends there, night sessions.
And Zapac
day
was still
sessions.
one of the more better ones, by the way.
They're the better ones. Yeah, for sure. And of course, there were the smaller cafes that you would see around. I remember there was a cafe called, I think it's called Zone. There's right outside my engineering college. And we've spent hours and hours over there.
What college did you study in?
I studied in RNSIT in Bangalore.
Oh,
this is on the outskirts.
so my dad
of
studied in Bangalore.
Ah,
That's what I was asking. If it's the same college, I'm like, damn, bro.
which college is that?
He was in Dayanand Sagar.
Dayanand Sagar. It's not too far away from Dayanand Sagar. I've played versus. So, to be fair, I did have information science seat in Dayanand Sagar in CET. So there are these multiple entrance exams, right?
I know.
So through CET round 1, I'd actually picked up information science in Dayanand Sagar, but later on I happened to move.
My
to
dad's
RNSIT.
friends, they were either in Dayanand Sagar or MS Ramaiah. Either of the two.
Rama is actually right next door. It's very close to where I stay. But then I had to travel all the way across because, I picked the college because it had a fancy football ground. So it's like, gotcha. Priorities.
Let's not go back to football. You've just recovered from a broken thumb right now.
Yeah. Another day. So coming back. So, cafes, I think the social element of being in cafes, it was not just about going there and playing, right? It was socializing with your friends.
Oh, wait, when you said cafes, you meant like gaming cafes?
Gaming cafes, of course.
For some reason, my first thought was like coffee cafes.
No, we will get to coffee cafes as well. That we will talk about.
My apologies.
When you're going to Zapac to drink coffee, Mamba? I used to go to Zapac.
See, it didn't hit me then. It did not hit me then. But I just realized that there was some dissonance in what I thought. No, it doesn't add up, bro. I was thinking of coffee and this guy's talking about gaming.
All we had was cup noodles and Coke there. And enough of it. That was the combo we survived on. Cup noodles, Coke, and Dota. That was Zapac. So how is the scene in Surat? Are there gaming cafes still there? I know pandemic kind of changed the scene up a fair bit. A lot of the cafes shut down either during pandemic or post-pandemic. So is there a thriving gaming cafe scene there?
Probably been to more cafes outside Surat than in Surat. It's ironic because I rarely ever went out to cafes in Surat, only if my school friends wanted to go play some CS, and eventually after inviting me for like twice or thrice, they stopped inviting me because I was wiping the floor with them. Right? They would play $2,000, right? I said I'd pick up the orb, cross the passage and just sit down in the orb, and they couldn't do anything because they peek me dead. So cafe culture right now is pretty decent, I'd say. Okay. There are a few good cafes with like 240, 360s also. I think one of them has good PCs.
Nice.
But I personally have never really had the opportunity to explore it because most of the times I would be playing online from my home. So never really had to step out to a cafe.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Now that cafe is out, we'll talk about your favorite kind of cafes. So, of course, I don't know if people have been under the rock, but I think everybody else knows that you love coffee. And we did have, in fact, you on one of our Friday features as well, where, that was when I learned, third wave coffee of those options were your preferred spot to go to. So
out of the options,
of course. What is your favorite coffee hangout spot in Surat?
Miraki, hands down. Like I think that's one place I obviously go to. But the tragedy is that it's become so pop. So when I discovered it was like coffee culture was still very small in Surat, right? The scene was very small and there would usually be empty tables there. It's become so bad now, I can't seem to find an empty table. It's like I marketed my way out of the cafe. Right? Because I would always post a story, and it's not because they're famous because of me, but just like me, there's obviously other patrons who talk about it, right? And they moan about it all the time. So now they've opened up a third cafe. Yesterday was the opening. I was supposed to go there with a friend of mine, but I was not feeling very well. So I'm yet to go. But Miraki, obviously, the one which is in Vesu, not the satellite one, because Vesu one is the oldest one.
Okay.
Apart from that, I've been going a lot more to live stream.
Okay.
The cafe's name is Livestream because one, it has a great vibe. Obviously, the food's great, the coffee's also great, and I can easily find tables there. Miraki, it's not possible only, dude. Like, I've not been there in 2 months. I was thinking, यार याद कर रहे होंगे मेरे को जाना चाहिए.
Also, one thing I think that's straight up people are going to think as soon as you say, you like coffee, is the fact that you probably drink a lot of coffee. Is that the case?
I don't actually. No. I have this very strict rule that I only have 1 cup a day. And every time I tell this to someone, they wouldn't believe it. So I'll tell you what happens. So I used to cycle on and off of coffee because the moment I feel like I can't function without a coffee, I stop it. And most of the times I would be able to go cold turkey on it. So the last time I tried to go cold turkey, because I feel like dependence on any sort of substance which is going to enhance whatever, right? Eventually it becomes a problem.
Yeah.
So last time I tried to go cold turkey, I had a terrible headache and I felt nauseous. Right. I was like, okay, no, this is bad. The fact that I'm so dependent on caffeine is not good. So I started tapering off of coffee. So usual coffee was 18 grams of beans with 250 ml of water. And I eventually moved to 20 and 300. That was the ratio, 20 grams of coffee beans and 300 ml of water.
Right.
Started tapering it down 1 gram a day and I got it down to 8 grams. Now it tastes like mud water. It tastes terrible. Okay, like it's just bad. But I got fond of coffee because the process of making it, right? I fell in love with the process of making it. It's when I could sleep, I could shut down. It was just the only thing I was focusing on. So I still love the process of brewing coffee. I still love having that cup. Even right now, I had a very mild mud water cup of coffee. I would love to keep having it, but I'm trying to contemplate whether this dependency on caffeine is good, because I realized when I started tapering off, right, my quality of sleep significantly improved. Waking up was easier in the morning. I feel like my gut also does a lot better when I'm not having coffee, even though it's just black coffee. So it's a tough decision to make.
Is that something you're considering, like quitting coffee?
I am actually considering quitting coffee. But when I say quitting coffee, I don't mean just never having it. Maybe I'd have it twice a week.
Got it.
Something like that. Make it like a ritual where I have it on certain occasions. But right now I've stopped myself at 8 grams of coffee because I still like having it. And it's just enough caffeine where you don't feel dependent on it or it doesn't ruin your sleep. Right. And the reason why I'm thinking, because it's very counterintuitive if you think about it, right? Because for me, there are certain principles I try to work upon: optimization, efficiency, and performance. So I sleep not because sleeping is fun, because you need rest and recovery, right? Even a lot of times when I feel like pushing through and playing one more map of Valorant, I'm like, no, you wake up in the morning early when you're fresher. It's more efficient to play that way because you won't make those mistakes.
Yeah.
And if my sleep is suffering, I feel like food and sleep are the two of the most important things you can do in your life. Eat good quality food, don't eat junk, or sleep well and exercise, right?
Yeah.
So I'm trying to weigh the pros and cons of whether or not it's screwing over my sleep and my rest and recovery.
Got it. So, of course, you're gonna need to replace that with other hobbies as well. And you did tell me you have a fascination for space and learning about it.
Yeah.
So how is that? What is that fascination? Elaborate a little bit more. And is that something that you plan to put a lot of time into in the future?
No, I don't plan on putting time into it. Like if I come across it, I'll read upon it, but it's not something I'm willing to put time into. But it came to me when I was watching this show by Stephen Hawking on Discovery when I was young. And it left me with existential questions, because I was a 12-year-old kid learning about, oh my God, this is how it happens. And up until then, all you know is what have you been told, right? That sun's there, but sun's a star, but why is it a star? Why is sun the way it is, right? Just something as simple as hydrogen collapsing into helium at the core of the sun to me, it was very intriguing. And then realizing, okay, So there's this habitable area around a star where the temperature is just right, and if the planet is big enough where it can hold the atmosphere,
Yeah.
then there's a chance that there's other life out there, right? There's a big chance that there's other life out there, because in every star has this habitable zone. And you're telling me out of all these stars you see, there's not one planet in the right place at the right time, even if it's microbial life, even if it's a single-celled organism. You think it doesn't exist? And that puts into question everything you know about philosophy, about faith, about a lot of things. And it intrigued me because of that, because it was so much fun to ask questions which were difficult, right? And I think I also used to get in a lot of trouble with my nani, because obviously she would want me to pray, and she was very religious. And I have faith. Like I don't think I'm an atheist or a theist. I consider myself an agnostic. I believe my moral compass isn't enforced by somebody who's out there looking at me, right? Right. I don't think my moral compass is influenced or enforced by something exterior. It's very internal. And I have a very simple theory that I don't care if there's somebody out there. If there is, great. If there isn't, that's okay. It really doesn't matter. So that is why I grew a fascination for space, is because all the conventional wisdom you have, right, because of the lack of technology that you had, it throws it under the bus. And to me, challenging conversations are very nice, because it just forces you to broaden your perspective. It teaches you new things. It teaches you how to go through conflicting conversations with a person, right? And I think that bleeds into life. It could be with your family. It could be with your partner, your child, your boss. You never know, right? But these are skills that you eventually learn from places where you pick it up. Yeah. So that's why it grew on me.
In terms of learning about space, now I can kind of see a pattern developing. That is something I've always been fascinated with. Now I've learned of your fascination. On my previous podcast, Ocean talked about his.
Ocean's a big physics nerd. Yeah.
Space and casting, I think, hand in hand.
Intergalactic
championship. The one's in contention for it. When it happens.
Well, yeah,
that's representatives.
Yeah, pretty cool though.
Pretty cool.
It's. I have this curtain in my studio which is space themed.
Your lights were as well. I think that was the lights bouncing off those curtains on the wall behind you.
That's the space light.
That's a space light as well. Wonderful.
Yeah. I do find it very cool, right? So
yeah.
It's just so when James Webb Telescope was launching, also I was so interested, like, because first of all, understanding what a Lagrange point is, right? It's like L1 and L2, whatever it is. It's a point where you're moving with the Earth, right? Because of how gravity balances out over there, and just the amount of thought that goes into it, the amount of precision that goes into it. I feel like it's not just about space at that point. It's about this indomitable human spirit of doing all these crazy things. And I think it teaches you a lot. Like, learning about space teaches you a lot more than just what exists out there. It teaches you about life.
Well, that's a lot to think about. They're probably going to spend the rest of the night thinking about that. But
the wife wouldn't be happy.
So Mamba, what's next for you? What's in the immediate pipeline? What is it that you're currently working on? Any sneak peeks you can give us? What's happening?
Currently I'm working on my channel. I stream on Twitch, which is the same as my channel name.
Links are
I'm making content on YouTube. Yeah, so I'm making content on YouTube, and that's what's the most immediate. So professionally, I feel like I've checked off every box in terms of the aspirations I had, right? At this point, it's just about doing something meaningful and making enough money off of it that you live a fulfilling life, right? I've said this time and time again. The reason I live in Surat is not for one or two reasons. Obviously, there are smaller reasons, but the privilege of just waking up, and yesterday morning I woke up sick, right? I wasn't feeling good. I walk into my parents' room. My dad's off to get the favorite snack, and I'm laying down. My mom's laying down by my side, and she's massaging my head. Not even $1 billion can buy you that. And I tell this to my friends that I've probably stunted my career growth by not being in Delhi or Gurgaon, where I could work out a studio, maybe in Bangalore, right? I know for a fact if I was in Gurgaon, I would have been on the BGMS desk. Right? There's no reason for me to not be there.
Yeah.
But I choose not to be there because to me, this is a lot more important than being on television because I've done it once and that's all I wanted to do. For me, it was about proving a point that you can make a career out of gaming. So how do you buy that? How do you give up on it? That you wake up one day and you just want to like sometimes I just wake up, my mom's there in the hall. I wouldn't say anything. She wouldn't say anything. She just knows I'm rubbing my eyes and I'll go lay down my head in a lap and she'll massage my head for like 10, 15 minutes. Life's good, man. Like even right now, it's what's 5:42. My evening ritual is that I'll step out. My dad will be sitting there. We'll listen to some jazz. My mom will also come in, sit down, talk about life for a bit, and then go live at 8:30.
It sounds really good, Mamba. That is, I think, like we've been speaking. We just want to be in that comfort zone. Just have that peace of mind, and
Yeah.
that is awesome, man. And I don't want to keep you away from your daily routine. I know it's gonna start very soon.
No, take your time, man.
So we're not gonna drag this around too long. Any shout outs?
None, man. I think. And I do have a few actually. If I think about it, everybody who's on my Discord, all my friends that I've met in the last 2 years, everybody. So I have this channel called DGen, right? Everybody over there, a huge shout out to them. To name a few would be Neil, Clue, Nick, Sammy, Guak. All of these guys are wonderful people. And I think they've also been around at a time where it was great to have these bunch of people around, so they're all from different backgrounds. Some of them, two of them are software engineers. One is learning game designing. Some of them is a commerce student. One of them is a humanities student. Just in general, great people to have around. And I think family it's very obvious. I've always given them the credit, and they should ideally be the first ones to get the credit. But I feel like these guys and the appreciation I have towards them is something. It feels nice to verbalize it, and for them whenever they see it, really nice.
Awesome, Mamba. Thank you so much for your time. It was an absolute pleasure. Big shout out to you for making this happen. I know you were not keeping well yesterday, but hope you're feeling better, and hope you're gonna get better very soon. And all the very best for your journey ahead. We're gonna be watching it very closely, and yeah, wish you the absolute best. Hope you get that Lexus very soon, and I fly back down there to meet you as well. So
For sure, man. For sure.
peace, dude. Bye.